Hi there, I'm Karen. I'm the daughter of Leslie, who resides here at Martin Grange, and also my late mother resided here for just over a year until she passed away last month. The reasons for them coming here were slightly unusual. Back at the start of the pandemic in March 2020, my parents, who've lived in Margate, Kent, all their lives, had a health crisis, and Dad had collapsed at home. He was Mum's carer, and he had health issues himself. He at the time was 93 years of age, and Mum had dementia and an acquired brain injury caused by a fall, so Dad looked after her, and they used to have 2 hours care going into the home every day. The fall that Dad had resulted in him being on the floor for 5 hours until the carer arrived. Mum, when the carer arrived, wasn't able to answer the door. Although she had keys in her pocket, she wasn't able to remember how to unlock the door. So the carer, that was fairly new to them, called the paramedics, and quite unusually the paramedics actually forced entry to the property. They decided not to wait for the police. Because I was 200 miles away down in Dorset, and I actually live right next door to Martin Grange, I asked for my mum to be taken into Margate Hospital as a social admission because I couldn't get time down to Margate in time to provide the care she needed. Both parents were in Margate for 10 days in Margate Hospital, and they were assessed by a social care team as not being safe to return home even with 24-hour living care. I asked for rehab in the local community hospitals in Thanet and Kent, and there weren't any vacancies because we were right at the start of the pandemic. And I also quickly researched the care and nursing homes in the area, and they were all full. So, being next door neighbour to Martin Grange, I shot round and spoke to Janine and asked if she could take both my parents for 6 weeks rehab purposes, to which she readily agreed. And 2 days later, Mum and Dad arrived in an ambulance from Margate Hospital and started sort of living here. Mum was very confused, and I was only allowed to actually see them through the window because we literally went into lockdown the day after they arrived. But all I could hear her saying was, "I don't know where I am." Dad was reassuring her, but he had also got a level of confusion following his hospital admission. And they also had to isolate in the room for 2 weeks on arrival, but they had the couple suite, which we're in at the moment, and they were able to have a good quality of life with their own lounge room and double bedroom. At the time, both of their care needs were very minimal. Dad was quite shaken by the fall he'd had, and various other medical issues had been established. Mum had macular degeneration as well as dementia, so she needed a lot of guidance and reassuring. So all in all, they were just receiving basic residential care when they arrived, and for the first 2 weeks sort of not able to meet with other residents, but they had a host of staff coming in looking after them and soon adapted very well to the environment. Once they were settled at the end of the 2-week period of isolation, they started to go out and meet other residents. Mum was very shell-shocked about being in residential care, but she was reassured having Dad with her and also very good staff. I will sort of add that I have personal experience of the home as well as being next door neighbour. I was a team leader, manager of a team at Dorset Council Social Services working there for 33 years, and I used to carry out the Mental Health Act assessments and best interest assessments under the Mental Capacity Act. So I had been in the home several times in a professional basis, carrying out assessments, and I also knew members of staff here who worked here, who had worked for Dorset Council before they transferred over to Martin Grange. So I knew that the level of care that they would be receiving would be exceptional, having witnessed it as a professional and also as a colleague of members of staff working here. Dad really embraced the residential care aspect. His health hasn't been good over the last 40 odd years, I should probably say, and 40 years ago he was actually given 3 months to live with cancer and defied all sort of expectations, being treated at the Royal Marsden, and since then he's had triple heart surgery and also a ruptured appendix. All of the relatives call him 10 Lives Leslie, and he's actually in Dorchester Hospital at the moment recovering from another illness, but we're hoping he is going to be back here again later this week. He's had 6 admissions since he's been in hospital, in Martin Grange, but most of those have been since he received the COVID vaccination. It seems to have impacted on his health slightly, so he has sort of required a lot of care more recently, and he has also had to self-isolate for 5 occasions so far since February. But this hasn't bothered him at all because he's had the staff coming in to reassure him, talk to him, and he sort of seems to have settled well back into the environment every time he returns. During periods of confusion, I've actually had Dad phone me up and say, I'm actually in a hotel in the Mediterranean and I don't know how I'm going to get back. So a little bit of reassurance is, no Dad, you're not in the Mediterranean, but you are in a very nice establishment that's like a 5-star hotel and you're being looked after. So that usually settles him. From sort of his own perspective, he had triple heart surgery just over 10 years ago, and on return from that he became sort of an armchair television fanatic. He used to play a lot of tennis, but his zest for life disappeared completely, and apart from looking after Mum, he did absolutely sort of nothing for himself. And since he's been here, he's painted garden benches, done some gardening, he's played carpet bowls, and I think, being quite a keen sportsman, he tries to beat the ladies but doesn't always succeed in that. He's also played archery. He's not very keen on sort of the quizzes, but that is really because of his hearing problems, and he prefers to take part in sport activities, and the staff here always ensure there is a very good mix of activities for both males and females within the home. I have had no complaints whatsoever with the care. I know a lot of relatives have been frustrated with the restrictions around visiting. When these have been lifted, we've been able to meet our relatives either in the old church, which is on site, or more recently in the guest room. And because Dad's had hospital admissions, I've also been able to see him in his room or sitting at sort of the patio door of his room so that I can maintain contact. One other very nice touch with the home was that when Mum became very unwell in her last week, I was able to visit on a daily basis. and contact was maintained, and the same after she'd passed away. I was able to visit Dad on a daily basis as well to ensure that he was okay. Mum unfortunately became quite unwell approximately May last year, and at that time the local GP wrote her up for end-of-life medication. She had a host of illnesses that we believe might have been contributed to long COVID, but we have never had a firm diagnosis on that. But throughout her sort of illness, having been given sort of or written up for end-of-life medication in May time, the staff here maintained absolutely first-class care of Mum. The medication was never given, and she enjoyed 11 months of further time with Dad, with him pottering in and out of the room, checking on her but still undertaking his own activities, and up until the last month of her life they were still able to share a room together, but then sort of moved to separate rooms to give her some more privacy. So altogether the care here, whether it's palliative care or for people who have nursing needs or for residential care for people who are more active, is absolutely outstanding. The food, Dad never has any complaints about. He does comment that there's a lot of fresh vegetables, and not being a person that enjoyed vegetables, sort of I explained to him that's for his health reasons, and I think he'd rather sit down to a sort of curry or a plate of ribs, but he is encouraged to sort of eat all the vegetables, and the meals are highly nutritious and well planned out. Mum was eating pureed food at one point, and the meals were exactly the same standard and quality as everybody else in the dining room received, the only difference being that the chef pureed the meal that every other resident was eating. So if you are on a special diet, you have the same meal that every other resident has, but moderated to meet your own needs, whether that's content or appearance wise. So all in all, care is absolutely faultless. So with the pandemic at the moment, although restrictions are relaxing somewhat, if you were looking at coming to Pine Martin Grange yourself, or you were looking at choosing for a relative, you might be a little bit concerned about how your investigations could proceed. And I am sure that if you spoke to the staff here, they would be able to do a video link tour for you of the home. They would be able to let you speak to other residents on Zoom or on Teams. And they would probably be able to give you a guided tour from the outside, looking into the rooms and the facilities. There's also an excellent website whereby you can see all the facilities available, and one of the big bonuses for Dad is the cinema room, because he has always loved watching Wimbledon and also the cricket, and he finds that if he sneaks in there quick, he can sort of get prime seat for watching the tennis or any other sport activities. So really it is sort of what you ask for. If you have concerns about choosing a care home for your relative or for yourself, then ask if you can see absolutely everything. The staff here will facilitate anything you need, and until restrictions are fully lifted, there is every opportunity to speak to other residents and the staff and have a good look round the home. From my own perspective, again, I live next door, and 2/3 of my house overlooks Pine Martin Grange, and all I actually ever see or hear when I'm looking out the upstairs window or from the garden is I hear the sound of staff laughing and joking and being very, very happy in their work. So for me it's reassurance, and even if it's late at night and you hear staff moving about outside, it's always a reassurance that they are there enjoying their job. So for me it's been the right choice. Mum and Dad never wanted to come into care, but they actually feel that they are in an environment that allows them as much freedom under the situation that they are able to experience. I know Dad's looking forward to going out and seeing the sea again, and I know that Martin Grange are about to organise individual trips out for people in the minibus. So I'm actually hoping that once he's back from hospital and well enough, he'll be able to go down to Swanage for a day out.